Hey everyone, this is Jason Probst, that guy in Hutch, and you're listening to That Podcast in Hutch. Today I'm excited to have a couple of people in the studio with me. They've been doing a lot of work in town, and you've probably seen some of the activity over the last year and a half or so. Mark and Phoebe Davenport, they're the owners of the Leon Apartments, the Plaza Towers, and the Hoke Building, all in the downtown Hutchinson area. Thanks for coming on today, guys.
Thanks for having us, Jason.
So you're not from Kansas. You come here right now, you're living in the Kansas City area, but that's not where you're from originally. Tell us a little bit about how you came to be investing in Hutchinson, Kansas.
Well, I'm originally from New Hampshire.
I'm from England.
Yeah, and so...
Yeah, well, we were living in Brooklyn, New York, and we were working on a bunch of properties in New Hampshire. We would drive between Brooklyn, New York and New Hampshire and work on those properties. And for a number of different reasons, Brooklyn, New York wasn't a great place for us to be. We have young kids. We want a different kind of lifestyle, but also we wanted to kind of scale our business with real estate. So we visited some friends who had family in Missouri, and we saw what was going on with commercial properties in the Midwest, but it was in Missouri. It was in St. Joe, and we saw this big school building that was, until like a year ago, at that time, it was full of kids and was being used as a school building. And then it was on the market for $200,000, and we were just astonished that a school building would become available to any person who would submit an offer, and for that price point. And we were in Brooklyn, New York, so you can't even buy you can't even buy a one-bedroom apartment for that. But
you get a cardboard box on the street for $200K.
Yeah, so I mean, I think probably it clicked, like, okay, there's opportunities to kind of make some moves here. So we moved to Kansas City, and we decided to kind of set up our lives there as a family, but also with the idea that, hey, we'll run around here for a little bit and see what we can do.
So it's kind of a combination. You wanted, thought maybe big city life, having small kids might not have been quite what you wanted, but also when you kind of started looking at the property available in this area and the price, like you said, the price point of some of the property, it was quite a bit of difference, right? Like you said, cardboard box in New York, 6-story building in Missouri or Kansas, right?
Right.
Absolutely. And we had about 18 units in New Hampshire at the time. And when we were thinking about selling our properties on the East Coast in order to reinvest in the Midwest, it was a no-brainer for us. It's a way for us to get some experience in a larger property without breaking the bank for us compared to, the market we were playing in at the time.
Sure. So that gets you to Kansas. What then brings you to Hutchinson? Or why do you start looking at properties in Hutchinson?
At the time we were in the process of selling the portfolio we had in New Hampshire, knowing that we wanted to reinvest, and we put the funds aside, and we were looking at different states, mainly in the Midwest, Kansas, Missouri, and I was just on Realtor.com. I think it was one night looking for properties as I would do, and I saw these two buildings pop up in Hutchinson, and that was Plaza Towers and Leon Place. And I'm just mostly astonished that that they pop up. One is for people who don't know, Plaza Towers is a 12-story, 100,000 square foot apartment building, and Leon is 6 stories. So we were just astonished that was within striking distance with what we happened to have, after selling our stuff. So
we get on Google Maps and say, "Where's Hutch?"
And that was what it was like. Where is this town? I'd never heard of it before.
Yeah, it's about a 3-hour drive from Kansas City, so we felt like that was reasonable. The drive from Brooklyn to New Hampshire is 5 hours, so for us, it was kind of what we were used to.
So this isn't too far of a drive compared to that. It's comparable or even less, I guess.
Yeah. Right. It's a day trip for us.
Yeah. You can make it down and back in a day, right? Come down and do some work and still get back.
That's what we're doing today.
Yeah. So you're down today, and then when you're done doing what you need to do here, you'll head back home.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Very good. So you start looking. So that piques your interest, and you start looking at it, and then you kind of, I guess you came down and you looked at it, and sometime in was it late 2020 that you closed on the buildings, maybe early 21 on the second building?
Yeah, we bought Plaza in July of 2020, and then Leon was a few months after that.
Okay. So, well, how many units are in each of those buildings, apartment units? I mean, I know the Plaza has at least 2 stories of commercial property, and you guys have been really active on developing that.
Yeah,
But
Plaza has 63 apartments, and they're really good size apartments too. And then it has on the first floor, it has a restaurant, 2 retail spaces, and a old kind of speakeasy bar area.
Mhm.
And then the second floor of Plaza has a big ballroom that seats 300 people. It has a smaller event room and then some offices. And Leon has 33 apartments, and the first floor there has a couple of retail spaces as well. It also has this interesting area in the back that we're looking to make into smaller, kind of cost-effective office options for the one-man show.
Oh, yeah.
So that'll be coming hopefully in 2022.
Oh, wow. Now, you and I have talked before, and I think I told you the story about the Red Lion that used to be in the back of the Plaza Towers. And for people who've been around Hutch for a while, they know that was at one time one of the most interesting bars and maybe the coolest bar in town. It had this whole, like you said, a speakeasy vibe to it. It was like a backdoor entrance. So it's good to see somebody kind of working to revitalize that space a little bit.
Well, an interesting story on that is that when we were looking for a lender to partner with on the project, we stumbled upon Michelle at People's Bank, and she was like, "My wedding reception was at the Red Lion," and it was just a really cool connection to hear about a little bit of the history. She obviously knew the building better than we did.
I bet there's a lot of stories from the Red Lion. Some of them
For sure.
tellable, and some of them not.
Right.
So, I want to come back to the properties and talk a little more about that, but I also want to talk about you individually. What did you do before you invested in property and came to Kansas?
I was still am, but at the time I worked as a musician.
Okay.
So I would drums, bass, and guitar. I would teach and play in bands.
Okay.
And I'm trained as an occupational therapist, so I have a master's in OT, and I was practicing in New York, but since we came to the Midwest, I have not practiced here because we're doing real estate here. So
Now, how are you liking life in the Midwest?
It's a lot easier.
Yeah, is it?
I think so, yeah.
Well, we're kind of seeing that now, right? We're starting to see kind of this urban flight a little bit, especially after the pandemic, where people realize I may have been living in a place like Brooklyn or Silicon Valley or something like that for my job, but now I don't have to live there. We've discovered that we can do our jobs from, particularly if you work in those kind of fields, you can do it anywhere. And we're starting to see more people interested in living in the Midwest. Explain to people, because most people that are hearing this probably live the bulk of their life in Hutch or a place like Hutch or in Kansas. What is so different about life here versus in a place like Brooklyn?
I think parking is probably the number one thing. You can park in your driveway or right outside your house on the street or your apartment building. You can carry your groceries in. It's really, the logistics of life are a lot simpler than they were in Brooklyn.
Yeah. I've never considered that because I too have spent most of my life here. But yeah, something like buying groceries and you got 15 bags of groceries, you're looking at parking possibly blocks away, right? Carrying your groceries to your house, and maybe you live on the 10th floor of an apartment building and you got to carry them up.
Right.
And it's just that
and you got
even
kids
things like
in the
that.
car, they crashed on the way home, and you got to carry your 2-year-old and 10 bags of groceries.
Yeah. But a place like this, you can just get your groceries, duck into your house, put the groceries away, come back in, grab your kids, whatever, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I remember when we were in Brooklyn, we would sometimes, depending on when we came back to our apartment, we were renting an apartment. When we were driving with our own car, we would circle the block maybe or the area for like 15 minutes to try and find a spot, and then we'd park the car 15 minutes away from the house, or the apartment that we were living in. I mean, and that's in a way, New York City is so romantic, and it really is. It's an awesome place to live, but in some ways, it's also really difficult to live because of the logistics.
Yeah.
So.
And how about having children? I mean, you mentioned that you started thinking, well, maybe we don't want to live in the city when we have children. Talk about that a little bit. What about having kids makes you start to reevaluate maybe not living in a city?
For me, it was primarily the logistics. I really love living in a city culture. I love the diversity and being around different types of people. And I want my kids to experience that. I want them to grow up around people who are different from them. But yeah, the logistics are really tough, having either no yard or very tiny yard. Yeah, things like that made it difficult to stick it out with the kids.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think when they get older too, it'd probably be easier in a city.
Right.
I can see that. Well, I'm going to take a little bit of a turn here, but this has piqued my interest. So as we see some people leaving urban areas, and I think there's always a lot of conversation in Kansas about how do we attract people from out of state. And you're talking about, it's a simpler, the logistics are easier, but also there's some of the cultural components and the diversity. What sort of things do you think Kansas might be able to do or a place like Hutch might be able to do to try to pull more people in? We have kind of baked in the simplicity, but maybe there are some other things we ought to be doing to try to pull more people like you into our state.
I think having different kinds of food really helps. I mean, we lived in the Middle East for a little while, and Mediterranean food is nowhere to be found, sadly. And it's things like that would make people from different cultures feel more welcome in a place.
Mm-hmm.
I can totally see that.
Yeah.
I've read something before that says the quickest way to break down cultural barriers is through food. Right? Everybody loves food, and most people are at least a little bit curious about other cuisines.
Right.
So if you start bringing other foods in, it helps a lot. But you had all the kind of country fried steaks or chicken fried steaks you can handle here.
And Hutch has a lot of Mexican food to offer too.
Yeah. We have that. We have that for sure.
And it's great food.
Yeah, it's great, but it is. We don't have a lot. Like I say, we don't have a lot of Mediterranean. We did one time have a Indian place in the gas station, but I haven't seen if it's still there.
That's one of our family favorites.
Yeah, Indian. Oh yeah, I love Indian food.
I mean, it's like there's a lady who runs, I think, a Dairy Queen just behind Leon, and she's from the Middle East. I think she might be Lebanese.
Yeah.
And Lebanese food is just amazing. And she's running an American ice cream store, and that's totally cool. She does what she does, and that's awesome. But Lebanese food, really good.
Yeah. They probably made an assessment that there wasn't much market for Lebanese food in Hutchinson. But I really do wish that we had more ways to try different foods here in a place like Hutch, because it's just, anytime I get a chance to try something else that I've never tried before, I try it, because in a form, it's kind of like traveling, right?
Yeah.
You can travel somewhere else and enjoy what other people enjoy without ever leaving.
Right.
So you played music. Talk to me, like, what kind of music did you play? Like blues, rock? You played mostly drums, you said?
Yeah, mostly drums. I migrated to some other instruments because I met people who played those instruments really well, and I kind of wanted to become like them, I think.
Yeah.
I would play rock, blues, not really so much blues, rock, pop, funk, mainly stuff that was I could make money doing. That was kind of a large goal I had. I love music. I enjoy playing it, but I'm also kind of a realist, and I didn't just want to play in my garage. I wanted to make some money with it. Whether I was able to do that is, of course, up for debate. I guess I decided on a different career choice. But
we might ask Phoebe whether you made money with
that. That was pre-kids.
It didn't take long for that to be like, wait a sec, lifestyle-wise, if I didn't do so much work with bands that I was out touring, but I would, out on the weekend, I'd be out Saturday or Sunday, and I wouldn't be back till 2:00 in the morning. And it just got to a point where it's like, okay, for $100 or $150, you break it down per hour, and you're like, wait a sec, this isn't even minimum wage, but it feels so glamorous to be a musician. Apart from it doesn't, because you're playing to 5 people.
Yeah.
So it's like, the dream of it versus the reality is a little different.
It's funny, my son is a musician, and so he plays a lot of shows, and he talks about that too. By the time you put the practice time in, learn the music, make sure you have it, you break it down by hour,
Right.
but he just loves it. And I
Right.
think when you're a musician or you have a craft that you just are passionate about,
Right.
it's easy to kind of, forget that it's not actually paying very well. But it's one of those things I wish we had a better mechanism to reward talented artists, whatever field they're in, to be able to do what they love to do and make a decent living at it. But maybe someday.
We all
Yeah.
benefit from that kind of culture, and
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's funny, and I've taken a way long turn here, but I'll get us back. Because we do this, we have events, we have things going on, and if you were to remove the music from that, or you were to remove the art from that, you'd have a soundless, gray, drab community,
Right.
and we all kind of know that at some level. But our economics aren't structured in a way that we value that the same way we value widgets.
so true.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and it's true. Like, it's like if you know someone has a passion to do something and you invite them to do it as part of what you do, there's an expectation they might do it for free because they just love to do it.
Yeah.
So, that happens with music all the time. I experience that. Oh, you play drums? Oh, will you come and play? Well, I will, because I love to play drums, but then I also would spend 3 hours a day practicing, and
Or
I got
6.
to a point, where I had, my goal was to provide for a family. So yeah, that happens, I think, in all kinds of different ways. Like contractors, someone who's an electrician, friends always ask them to help out with their electric, but maybe you don't pay them. It's interesting thinking about passion versus livelihood.
Yeah.
How those things work out.
How do you marry the two?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. To pull them together so that it works
Right.
as part of a fully functional economy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'll come back to the buildings. What you're doing here with the Plaza Towers and with the Leon and with the Hoke Building, which I want to talk about a little bit later in the show, really fits in with what we've talked about for years here in Hutchinson, which is kind of animating this downtown living and having a place or where people can live, shop, find their entertainment. These places are very close to the Fox, very close to Carl's Bar, very close to Jillian's restaurant. Like everything that you might want to do is right down here. Talk to me a little bit about kind of how you see the rehabilitation of these buildings and this development that you've been working on, how that plays into the broader vision for downtown Hutchinson.
Well, I think we really have a passion for more of that city feel. That's how we like to live. We love the history and all the culture that's there in an older part of town. For a while, a lot of people moved out to the burbs and they wanted to spread out and get a lot of space. But we really love the downtown or city kind of feel. So we have tended to invest in that type of area.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I was kind of amazed at when we saw the buildings to start with was how they looked basically functional. I mean, they mostly weren't incredibly updated, but also mostly not completely in disrepair in terms of most of the apartments and most of the commercial spaces. But it was just shocking to me why they weren't in use and why someone wasn't using them, renting them in some way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. And with our renovations, we're not coming in with Plaza and Leon. We're not coming in and doing these incredible gut renovations. It's mostly what does it take to communicate that to the neighborhood and to the downtown area, the people of Hutch. What does it take to communicate that as we as owners care about this building? Mm-hmm. So we're gonna do some simple renovations, put in new floors, take care of it, little bits and pieces, new paint. More when there's necessary. We'll replace some kitchens, give the bathrooms a fresh lease of life to show that there's pride in ownership. And then as we're kind of 1 year in now, it's interesting when people see that someone cares. Like, oh, that's interesting. Then we can present it to market because we've renovated in a cost-effective way. We're not dumping $50,000 into an apartment renovation. We've done it in a cost-effective way, which means we can bring it to market and pass that kind of price point along, so it's a cost-effective place to rent. Either a cost-effective, apartment because all bills are paid and it's still $500, $600, $700 a month, which I think is fairly good value. Or it's a great kind of commercial space, like an office suite for 400 or 450 or 500 or whatever it is, I think that's good value. And I think it's interesting how much demand we've had for those spaces. We almost can't, actually, it's true to say we can't renovate fast enough for.
Really?
Yeah. And that was the question I had. Also, while knowing I wanted to buy the building, it was also the question in the back of my mind is, do people care? Like, am I gonna, present my business to this situation and renovate? Will they want to be part of this? Is anyone going to want to rent? And so far, the answer has been a resounding yes, to the point where we need to hire more people to do the work, to renovate. So we can just move through the building and just present it back to the community in a way and have them take their place. Because we live in Kansas City, so this is all about, or at least a lot about Hutch.
Yeah. Yeah. And you've hired a local property management firm, right?
Yes.
Is
yeah.
it
So
Lou
we're
Co?
partnering with Lou and Co.
Okay.
Yep. To manage the Plaza Towers and the Leon Place. Logan and M are the owners of that company, and they're really heavily involved in the community through YP, the Young Professionals of Reno County, and other arenas. M has another interior design business. So she's helping us design the Hoke Building, which is really exciting too. So it's been great to work with them on the project and to see what they bring to their piece of the puzzle too.
And are they working on some of the renovation and handling the logistics of that as well in some of the apartments?
We actually have another company that is doing the renovations, and that's Danler Construction.
Okay.
Lou and Co. is handling all the maintenance and placing tenants and things like that. And they're actually going to be setting up an office at Leon Place for their property management company. So that's really exciting for us too, to have them as the face of, the front of our building. So
That is great. That is great.
Yeah.
Well, and I was going to ask you, I found it interesting what you were saying about, we do this, we're going to present it and wonder if anyone's going to want to live here, because in this part of the country, the standard is you live in an apartment when you're young, and then as soon as you can, you buy a house and you get out and then you move out in the country or the suburbs or wherever, and you have a big spread. Who lives in your apartments?
We do have a fair amount of younger people who are kind of fall into that category. We have a large group of people who are older too, more in the retirement age category, maybe on a fixed income. We have a lot of wonderful tenants, actually. I really love our tenants.
That's good.
So
I'm sure they love you too, especially if you're making some improvements and making life a little better downtown.
Right.
Yeah, we've got a lot of great people, but our niche in the market has always been to try to keep the housing affordable. So we do, like Mark mentioned, we try to keep the renovations cost effective so that we don't have to jack the rents up. We try to keep it at a good price point. And I think especially during times like COVID and when the economy tanks, there's a huge demand for affordable places to live. So, that happened back in 2008 when everybody was losing their homes. It's like, where's everybody going to live? They got to rent somewhere. And we make it, our philosophy also is to be a place that we'd be happy living. So, and we have actually lived. We lived in one of the apartments over the summer with our kids because we were here every other week over the summer. And we just want it to be a nice, comfortable place for people to live.
Now, I was going to say, even though you both live in the Kansas City area, you are in town a lot. I've seen you at downtown events with your kids. So you are invested in the community. I mean, beyond the property, it seems that you're involved in a lot that's going on here in the community.
Right. Well, we knew that in a sense it had to start with us. We needed to make connections as far as our own business. When we bought buildings, we needed to meet people who would be interested in renovating or would be interested in doing property management. So we knew that wasn't going to necessarily just magically present itself to us. There's a reason why people don't buy these types of buildings, because they understand you gotta really take ownership, and they're not the types of assets where you buy and it's just, it's smooth sailing, everything's good to go. It's the passive lifestyle. So I think we kind of knew. I'm not sure if we fully had a grasp of how much it would take to do it. But yeah, that was always going to be the case. We have to meet people and understand who they are and try and make connections and discern if their values are like our values. How do they want to renovate? How do they want to manage? Like, we own this building, but I'm not going to be here renting an apartment to a tenant. But they need to do it in such a way, the person who's leasing the apartment, that it reflects well on me, because I'm the building owner, and we've always felt that. Like, when there have been people who've worked for us and it hasn't been a good fit, then eventually it doesn't work, and you have to try and find a better fit.
Yeah.
And that's something we take very seriously as owners. Is we own that building, and history will show these things happened on our watch. So
yeah, very true. Now, Phoebe, you talking about the apartments and the tenants that you have. I was thinking one thing that we forget to talk about is that there are some real advantages to not owning your house and being able to live in an apartment. I mean, no lawn to mow, and that's appealing to a lot of people. Not worrying about maintenance.
Yep.
You probably find that a lot with some of the, both on the younger end and on the older end, that people are glad to not have that responsibility.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I have, with my background in OT, I thought, especially at Plaza where the apartments are really spacious, I'm like, this is the perfect housing for an older person. It's got elevator access. It's all on one floor. The doorways are wide.
Yeah.
The big bathrooms. You can get your walker around and things like that. So I have kind of that eye looking at it. So yeah, it's a great space to live. You can call somebody to take care of your problems if your toilet's backed up or whatever the problem might be. So
yeah, you don't have to replace the sewer line yourself or
exactly.
anything like that, right?
Yeah, we'll do that.
Well, another thing I wanted to talk about is, along with this, you have kind of an investment vehicle in this that allows other people to share in the growth that you're experiencing and to share in the returns that you get on these properties. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because when we visited before, I just found that so interesting that you've kind of set your company up this way.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting how it developed. Like 5-6 years ago, we sold our single family that we were living in and bought a duplex, and Phoebe and I renovated it ourselves, and we've kind of scaled our business since then. And it turned out about 3 years ago, we had a friend, kind of like an old family friend, who had done some real estate himself, and was kind of seeing what we were doing. And he was kind of an investor type. And I even forget the details of exactly how it transpired. But basically, it turned out that he wanted to invest some of the principal he had into some of the things that we were developing. And we had an agreement for, what APR we'd pay him and all these things. So it was an official agreement, and then we got to work with what was then our principal, because it was ours, and we had an agreement for how we'd reimburse him for everything in terms of APR, and then we put it to work in our projects. And since then, it's kind of grown more. There's more people who know about what we're doing. The projects we're doing are bigger, so it gets a little bit more attention. But I think that's kind of the core of it. We realized that we like to do certain real estate projects, and they tend to be profitable enough for everyone to win. For an investor to win, they can have a decent APR. It's great for our company to have that progress as well, in terms of how our company can develop, to be able to have more resources to take down projects, to develop projects. So we've kind of seen it as like, oh, this looks like kind of a win-win situation. And generally, when we see win-wins, we'd like to try and knuckle down on them and make them happen. So that's kind of how it's been the last 3 years. We've been kind of building these relationships. It's mostly organic. We do have a page on our website about it, but we just kind of meet people and then sometimes talk about it, and things develop and it becomes an official arrangement.
But you can invest for as little as, I think it was $1,000, right?
Yeah.
Somebody with as little as they don't have to be a qualified investor for a relatively little amount of money.
Right.
And you've consistently paid, what's typical return? I think on your website you have kind of a guaranteed return, right?
Right.
Yeah, we pay flat interest rate, 10 to 12% usually. We pay monthly interest payments, and it's a great option for somebody who is interested in real estate, but it's totally passive on the side of the investor. And we leverage their money ultimately and make it work for us, make it work for the community, make it work for the investors, and wins all around.
Oh, that's a great approach. That's a great approach. So one of the other buildings that you have that I really am looking forward to talking about, and it's also gotten a lot of attention in town, is the Hoke Building. Talk to me about what you're planning to do with that building.
Yeah, that project's really exciting. It kind of fell into our laps in some ways. The former owner of the property kind of chased us down a little bit. So we're in the works actually of converting that building into a boutique hotel, which is going to have 23 hotel rooms. And on the first floor, it's going to have a couple of retail spaces. So we're hoping for a coffee shop type area where you can get breakfast and lunch, and then maybe some sort of a wine bar or like an evening option for maybe some light food and drinks. Maybe before or after the trip to the Fox or something like that. It's kind of what we have in mind. It's really exciting. The property's been vacant for decades, many decades. So there's a lot of interesting situations going on there, but just a lot of history. It's almost like a time capsule in some ways where things have just kind of sat there and they're still preserved because nobody touched it.
So it is kind of like a snapshot back in time, right?
Yeah.
And
it's really cool.
If I'm wrong on this, we can cut this out, but you've hired Kristen Piper to do some photography there, haven't you?
Yeah, she's been coming down, taking a bunch of photos. We're intending to use some of her work as decor in the building once we get things up and running so that we can kind of display the journey from pre-renovation to post-renovation. She's so talented. I mean, the work that she does is just phenomenal. So I'm really excited to use some of her stuff.
Well, I know she really enjoys building renovations. She was involved in photographing the Wiley building, and it seems like any chance she gets to photograph that history and the way that it's kind of restored, I know she really enjoys getting involved in that.
Yeah.
Very good.
You can see her passion come through in her work. It's phenomenal.
Oh, absolutely. So are you guys looking at any other properties in town or anything you have your eyes on?
Well, there's this interesting one on the corner of 5th and Main. It's caught our eye, but we're not chomping at the bit quite yet. We got to knuckle down a little bit and get things moving on Hoke first.
Yeah, I know a lot of people would like to see that happen.
Hoke's kind of us proving how we can take down a larger building in a gut renovation sense, because we have to deliver, I think, in a way on that. It takes a lot of resources to kind of do that, and how that project is funded is through lots of different kind of entities, really, like a community organization, Hutch CF and Startup Hutch and the construction loan, different things. So I think ultimately that type of way of doing a project could do another project as well.
Sure.
But people don't like to lend large sums of money often until they have a lot of a larger track record. So I appreciate that. So, but maybe we'll go for it next week.
Yeah. Who knows? Well, talk to me about the Hoke. What makes a boutique hotel? Is it based on the number of rooms, or is there something different and unique about a boutique? Is it a theme that makes it boutique?
I'm not really sure about the technical term, but in my mind, it's just kind of a unique hotel. So it's not cookie cutter like, the chain hotels. It's going to have a lot of unique character. We're using historic tax credits for part of the project, which will, so the criteria for that mean we're preserving the historic structure of the building and as much of the original fabric as possible. So the majority of the walls are remaining where they are, the original trim work, any windows that we can salvage and things like that. So it'll have a lot of character. The rooms will be unique in terms of how they're decorated and things like that. So
that'll be great. And like you said, for people that are, in town for a Fox show, or they want to come in for just a weekend or something, I think that'll be a great way to bring people downtown to a unique experience that they can have. Because right now, again, talking about this downtown living, I mean, right now, most of the hotels are located on the east side of town.
All of them, I believe.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of a place that people might choose to stay.
Yeah. And so then if we want them to come downtown, they have to
Right.
drive, they have to find some way down. But
Right.
having something downtown seems like such a natural fit. So
Right.
Yeah.
everybody will be excited to see that project come through.
Me too.
Yeah, and Hutch has so many great things to offer. They just bring a lot of people to town, whether it's, through Prairie Dunes or the fairgrounds and all these different things. So yeah, I think there'll be a huge demand for hotel that's hopefully not high quality hotel and in the downtown area especially. So
I'm sure
Yeah.
you'll be full during the fair and during
Yes.
the NJCAA tournament.
I think it's
Yeah.
already booked for 2022 for the fair, assuming it's open.
So tell me when these are all done, both the apartments are full, the hotel's running. Maybe by then you're working on that certain building at 5th and Main. All of this is happening, or maybe by then you're done with the building at 5th and Main. Kind of just if you let your vision and your imagination go wild, what do you see downtown Hutchinson looking like when these projects are all in place and operating and you're done with the rehabilitation part of things and you're in the operational stage?
Yeah, I mean, when I first came to Hutch, I think I thought maybe what lots of people might think, or maybe people are better than I am, but like it seemed like there wasn't a lot going on. Now that I'm here more, I see that actually there is a lot going on, and you kind of have to take a little bit more of a wider view to see all the other kind of businesses that are developing or stores that are going in. So, I mean, I think there's people are doing lots of stuff. We're doing what we're doing, but there's lots of, I just saw on Facebook this morning, another store opened up on Main Street. So, and there's so much opportunity. Even now, there's still significant vacancy. So, I think probably there's lots of people working on lots of different things, and the value that Hutch offers, especially in the downtown, where you can buy a building for what I consider to be very good value, or rent a storefront or a commercial space for, again, what I consider to be very good value. I think that's such a good situation that surely I can't be the only one who's seeing it, and I think that kind of economy is necessarily in time will become something that looks to be a lot more vibrant, because it feels to me like an open door.
Yeah, and I think more people living downtown and more people coming to stay downtown will just create more of a buzz in the area and hopefully boost all the businesses in the area.
Well, it's interesting because, if there's some groups, Strong Towns, that group has been in town a couple of times. And it's always interesting to me because we kind of went through this period of expansion where we were going to pave roads out to wherever, and we were going to build strip malls all over. And now we're starting to see that if you can concentrate your people and you can concentrate the business activity, it kind of churns a lot better, right? You have more people living downtown, that leads to more business. You have more business, it leads to more people. And it's just this, what do they call it? A virtuous cycle. Because it just keeps feeding in the right way on itself.
Right.
And I can see that totally happening here, that we would have, all these people, all this activity, and then that leads to other things down the road.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just it's a great downtown. There's so many wonderful buildings, and even the investment that the city's already put into the main street, the drag there with the sidewalks and landscaping and things like that. There's a lot to offer.
Definitely. Well, I'm glad that you all, that we caught your attention, and I'm glad that you came to town, and I'm glad that you're investing in Hutchinson and helping make the place better.
Yeah, we're really happy to be in Hutch too.
Well, thanks for taking some time to visit with me today, and I'll make sure and put in the show notes your company's website and contact information, so if anybody is interested in learning more, they can have an easy way to find out.
Great.
Sounds great.
Thank you, Jason.
Thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having us.
All right, take care.
I'd like to thank a few of the people who've helped make that podcast in Hutch possible. My son Mitchell Probst wrote and recorded the music for the show. Jenny Brigette put together some great graphics and promotional art. And Chris Acker helps overcome my mistakes to produce a great sounding product every episode. That podcast in Hutch is made possible through a collaboration between the Hutchinson Arts and Culture Collective and Salt City Sound. They're working to bring resources and infrastructure to support art, music, and storytelling in our community. If you have an idea for your own podcast, reach out to them at podcasts@saltcitysound.net. If you enjoy that podcast in Hutch, be sure to subscribe and share it with all your friends. You can also help support this production by subscribing to thatguyinhutch.substack.com or by emailing me at thatguyinhutch@gmail.com to learn about sponsorship opportunities. Thanks for listening, and I hope you'll join us again next week.
A Salt City Sound production.